I did not expect the reception I got from the last video to be so big. It's not like we was breaking like 100K plus views or anything, but for me, like having like nearly 3K views right now and a bunch of comments, I just didn't expect it at all. I've never had anything like that. So I just wanted to say I appreciate everybody checked in, who subscribed, who liked, who spent the time to comment, all the comments and everybody's different views and perspectives. I don't know, it was great sitting there reading through everybody's comments and everything that everybody else had to say or to add, and I just thought it was really cool. So again, yeah, I appreciate y'all, and this is kind of like special for me because Stellar Blade, in a really weird way, is kind of like the beginning of like some of my journey really in streaming and content creation. It's kind of like hit this new benchmark here. If I come here to my YouTube channel, you'll see I'm on the live tab here, and then I click oldest, and you'll see a couple like random OSU streams practicing and testing out the multi-streaming and stuff with OBS. But then you come here and the next thing you'll see is my entire playthrough. At the time I had no mic, I had no model, I had nothing. It was just a complete playthrough of my entire first Stellar Blade run on the OG, you know. And so yeah, I put in and I beat the entire thing. It was one of the first things I actually streamed way back then. This was like before I was like seriously taking content creation all that serious. At the time it was more like a, hey, you know, I play a lot of video games, I might as well stream them and shit. But yeah, so I wanted to make a video here really just going over all of the information that we have so far that I've been able to gather about what Stellar Blade BloodRayne is going to be, what it's going to be about. Step away from the drama for a little bit. I do have a follow-up video to my last one planned to kind of come back and touch in on the drama one more time. And like I usually say, you know, my goal is to hit things in a different light. But for this, for today, I just wanted to touch in on not so much of the drama, but just the straight up info about the game, because I'm excited about the game. I feel like a lot of us are all excited about the game. We can't wait to like get our hands on it, and we got a lot of questions. I personally have a lot of questions that I want answered, that I want to see what's up, and we've actually got a lot of answers. I don't think I've been seeing enough videos with people actually talking about how many answers we actually have and deep diving into it. So we actually have had, besides the announcement, but we've actually had 2 different interviews from the CEO at ShiftUp that gave us a lot of answers, and I went and I read through both of them, and he gives a lot of straight up answers, and you've probably been seeing a lot of them on like Twitter about the, you know, towards some of the discourse and how he was talking about her age and her look. But reading through them, I feel like I found a lot of information that was really, really subtle, that if you, it's kind of like if you blink, you miss it, but actually gave us a lot of different information about the game. And so we're going to read through both of these articles and both of these interviews. We're going to piece them apart. We're going to kind of do a little bit of speculation here, and as far as what we think some of it means and what I think some of it means. We do have a lot to go over. These 2 interviews are pretty extensive with several different questions that he answered. Some of them are the same questions in each interview, but I know he answered them differently. And so we got this one here. Ayaka Mods posted this one from, it was Famitsu.com, which is I can't read it obviously, so they translated the whole thing, so we appreciate that, and we're going to read through this. But the other one is from Inven Global here, and it's you know, I'll strive to make BloodRayne a title we can be proud of. Like, yeah, we know you will, my dude. We have got no doubts. And this whole thing is pretty extensive in itself. This was an incredibly good interview on its own. Lots and lots of different questions asked and answered in pretty vivid detail. And this is where I'm talking about, like, some of the things that he's saying gives away a lot more than I think people are actually putting out. So I really want to put what I found out there. We're not going to read. I actually went through and took the time, because this website keeps flashing these different ads and they're kind of annoying as shit. So I actually went through and remade the entire interview on this like Word document. So let's get started. Let's start with this one that came out first, I believe. Yoon Tae, I'm pretty sure that's how you say it, but his first name is Kim Yoon Tae. I'm probably butchering that. We're just gonna call him Kim for short and make it easy. The first question was, first of all, why Stellar Blade Blood Rain instead of Stellar Blade 2? Basically studio philosophy. They didn't want to just call it 2 and have, they wanted to give it a proper title. Pretty vague. I think is a much deeper answer in the second interview. Could you tell us about the backstory of the new protagonist, Eevee? What does CDDP on Eevee's back mean? And this is where he just says, this is a little bit of information here. Eevee currently belongs to a special forces unit tracking down a group responsible for major terrorist attacks in the city. And then he says that he can't really go into what the CDDP is because he doesn't want to give spoilers. Then he says, let's be honest, there's a connection between Eve and Eevee, right? And this is something that a lot of people have already talked about. He says, yes, there is, but naturally he cannot talk about it because of spoilers. In the previous game, Eve primarily used sword and guns. Now, this is something that I believe, this part is something that I've took notice to really heavily, and I feel is like really important. Eve primarily used swords and guns, but Eevee focused on hand-to-hand combat. Why did the combat style change? He says, we felt that if she used a sword from the start, it would be too difficult to show a significant change from the previous game. Therefore, to highlight the difference by having a smaller framed Eevee perform powerful melee attacks, we've chosen to focus on close quarters combat. Although it doesn't appear in this trailer, there will be scenes where she uses a sword. So now what does that mean? This is where he speculated a little bit. He just says there will be scenes where she uses a sword. Now, it doesn't say that you will have a sword that you can use. I personally, from the way it sounds, I don't think that we will just be getting a sword to switch in between. But there will be parts where she's using a sword. It could be like something like special scenes against certain boss battles where she picks up a sword. Maybe it's like but then you also have the sword on her arm that, they've shown in the trailer. Now, this is interesting. What other kind of little changes or extra things will they add in to mix up the combat? As the story progresses, she's naturally able to use more weapons and skills. But rather than just adding weapons indiscriminately, we plan to give each weapon a reason for existing as part of the story, making combat more engaging. See, that's what I'm saying, where kind of like in each part of the story, perhaps you're using different things along in the story, or maybe, they just use the story as a pushing forward point to allow you to have like different kinds of weapons in it. Who knows, man? This one I could speculate all day on, but it is very interesting. But I do think that, some of the melee close quarters combat will kind of still be that baseline main type of combat, but we'll see, I guess. There was a scene where Eevee walks down the street, crosses a crosswalk, and chases after the main suspect. Can you explore that area in the demo? Yes, you can actually enter some of the shops on the side, but the area is definitely linear. However, I'd like to keep you in suspense regarding how the city is structured in future gameplay, naturally. I'll leave it at that for now. Please look forward to seeing how captivating we can make the city. This is something that he actually explains even further in the next interview, that he gives some very, very interesting little like hidden shadow things that I don't want to get into until we make it to it. But he does say that they want to plan the structure of the city for the future gameplay. So I promise you already, there's going to be some much more heavy open world areas in the city gameplay for certain areas, at least. There's going to be big open city districts or something like that. Now, that's not confirmed. That's not part of the interview. But if I had to guess, there's going to be like city districts. There could be parts of the game where we go out of the city or out of a city. But I imagine in my mind in like city districts or something like that. The graphics and evasion mechanics seem different, but the UI looks similar to the previous game. What has changed and what has remained the same? I don't think there's much that hasn't changed, he says. We also plan to modify the UI to make it easier for everyone to see. However, since we've only been in development for about a year, we can't show you any fully polished UI yet, so they're kind of just using it as a placeholder. The UI will change, and they plan to make significant improvements. They want to basically, it sounds like, as much of the game as they can change and overhaul and make better. That's what they want to do. There was a vending machine in the trailer. Will there be side content like any collecting, fishing again this time? Of course, there will be side content. One of our goals to make even more robust than the previous game. So confirmed, just like the last game. That means most likely collectibles, obviously skins and collectibles. As far as skins and outfits go, I imagine they'll even add more rewards for your collectibles in game. So that's it's nice to hear that they're not just trying to keep it the same, but they're trying to improve. You'll be self-published for the first time, launching globally from Korea. Do you have any strategy for bringing this game to people around the world? We don't have any specific strategies to share at this point. We're currently in the process of solidifying our foundation while seeking business partners. We want to reach as many players around the world as possible. This is pretty much right here. This is the important part about this question here, is we want to reach as many players around the world as possible. So basically what they're saying here is they felt held back by Sony, as they've shown many times. They're player first, they're fun first, and they feel like they're going to be able to do what they want with less limitations being self-published. That's basically what I get from this. And what's one of the biggest limitations that they had on Sony as their publisher on the last game was that they were only able to release it on PlayStation, at least for that first year, which to them it seems like that's a letdown, because they want as many people to play the game as possible. If 100% completion were the benchmark, at what stage would you say the current development progress is? This is a very interesting one. It's very difficult to answer that in terms of percentages. While the art, dedication, and background styling are pretty much finalized, there's still a lot of work to be done on the aspects like the later half of the story and the depth of the combat. Therefore, it's difficult to give an exact progress estimate, but since we have even greater ambitions regarding the game's scale and scope of expansion compared to the previous title, I'd say we're still in the early stages of development overall. And this is something that they have elaborated on even in the first game, and when the first game was over. And I've tried to explain this to people who had complaints with like the depth of the story, the depth of Eve, and different things like that. They said many times that they wanted to make the game way more in depth, way more expanded on the lore, on the world, and what you could have in the game. I remember somewhere they even said that they wanted to make an in-game lore reason why Eve was changing her clothes all the time, but these were things that were those, again, limitations that they had due to the time restraints and different things under Sony that they just couldn't get because they needed to push the game out. So they ended up cutting back on a lot of that stuff, focusing on the gameplay, and that what they really wanted to do in the second game was really flesh out a lot of the things that they wanted to do in this game, basically. So what platform, here we go, what platform will this game be on? We haven't finalized the platforms yet, but we plan to do our best to make it available to as many users as possible. That's like I'm saying right there, because they're self-published, they want everyone to have this game. They want everyone to play it. I'm talking about, if they can, they'll have it on Xbox. It's going to be on PC day one. I promise you that. If they can get a Switch port, I'm sure they will. The previous title was hugely popular in Japan, but the characters were also very sexy. Nike, I was never sure how to say this game's name. Nikkei, I'm sure someone yell at me in the comments, please correct me and yell at me for this. Is it a goal for Stellar Blade Blood Rain to surpass the sexiness of the previous title? What a crazy bold question, but I'm here for it, dude. Our goal is to surpass Eve's appeal. Of course, I really like Eve's appearance as well, but we're focusing on creating a character that players can truly love from the heart, rather than relying solely on physical appeal. Using lessons I learned from interacting with users of Nike, we're gonna just call it Nike, and building relationships with characters, I'm working on making Evie a truly captivating character. They're definitely going to be doubling down on the sex appeal of the game, especially with Evie The people who don't like her character model are definitely not gonna like that, but you know what? Fuck them. We're here for us as Stellar Blade fan time, you know. And the funny thing is, man, like as far as the discourse goes about the game, they want to pretend like, oh, now, like, oh well, Eve was at least, it was sure it was Gooner bait, but at least Eve looked like an adult. At least Eve looked like an adult, right? When Stellar Blade 1 was announced, they were saying the same thing. It wasn't as blown out because, you know, it wasn't, I made my last video about the, you know, God of War versus Stellar Blade. If the discourse behind God of War wasn't here, the discourse behind Stellar Blade would not have been as big. But Stellar Blade 1 had plenty of people complaining about how Eve looked like a quote unquote child and how it was, you know, PDF file baiting, quote unquote, whatever. It definitely happened. And now they want to pretend like that didn't exist in the first game when it definitely did. Oh, now Eve looks like an adult. Right. Right. And then, of course, they ask about any planned collaborations with Nike, and he says, I'm not sure yet, but of course, if he can, he will. Basically, he's gonna ask their team about it. He laughs. He says, he said, basically meaning, of course he thought about that, you fucking idiots. Of course he's gonna ask them, what do you mean? I'm sure the one in Stellar Blade 1 did really good, you know, anything for the fans. But yeah, so that was pretty much it for the first one. Again, like this came from the source of famitsu.com, and I cannot read it. Yeah, so I cannot read any of this, so that's why we were reading it over here. So, but that's the source material for that interview. So we're going to move on and come over to the next interview. Hey yo, what's up? It's during editing Jet. Now I realized that this video is actually going to be going on for like a pretty long time. Both these interviews were actually pretty extensive, and I mean, hey, that means lots of news, lots of cool shit. But to avoid the video from being annoyingly long, like an hour, you know, so that way y'all don't got to sit through the whole thing in one take, I decided to split the whole thing up into 2 parts. So this is part 1. We'll be editing it, and part 2 will be the second interview. And I'll be having that out literally ASAP. I'll be working on that and get that out probably later in the day, maybe the evening or whatever. But if nothing else, it'll at least be out for the next day. So stay tuned for the second part. But yeah, that's it. That's going to do it for the rest of this video. But yeah, y'all take it easy, and I'll catch y'all in part 2. Stay tuned.